Welcome to Hardwood Handicappers with Zach Cohen, right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
This is Zachary Cohen, VSiN.com senior editor with another episode of Hardwood Handicappers. It is Monday, January 26th. We are recording this at 10 a.m. Eastern. I hope everybody had a great weekend, but we have a lot of basketball to get into today. Some day games as well, which kind of struck me for surprise, but I was not expecting that. But we have some picks for tonight. We have 5 of them to be exact. I have 2 sides and totals, 2 player props, and then 1 parlay. We're going to get right into that with the Pacers taking on the Hawks at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Pacers at Hawks. The Hawks are 5.5 point favorites in this game. Totals 233.5. And the play that I have for this one is CJ McCollum over 16.5 points at -125. I think this is a play where, the Pacers are a unique defense. They're very good at defending the 3-point line. Actually, number 1 in the league at defending above the break threes, and number 2 in the league at defending catch and shoot jumpers overall. So a tough matchup for spot up shooters, but McCollum scores a lot of his points on pull-ups, mid-ranges, floaters, getting to the basket. I think that he's going to be able to kind of exploit a Pacers backcourt that I think is somewhat weak defensively one-on-one. And this is a guy that's now starting to find his groove a little bit in Atlanta. He's averaging 17.3 points per game in the 7 games he's played for the Hawks, 19 points per game in the last 2 games that he's played in Atlanta. And I do think that this is going to be a game that just kind of suits him very nicely. And he had 18 points against the Pacers when he last faced them. That was when he was with the Wizards. It was on December 14th. But I do think that this matchup is just very strong for him because I think he's going to be able to create his own offense here. And it is another game where there are some injuries for Atlanta. It's going to be Zachary Cohen, Kristaps Porzingis on the injury report again. That doesn't necessarily affect him too much, but they will probably have to move, Dyson Daniels to the 3, Jalen Johnson to the 4, and there's just going to be some more minutes for McCollum. So I think he plays a lot tonight. I think he goes off a little bit. I'd say 20-plus points is what I'm expecting, but all we need from him is 17-plus. So over 16.5 for CJ at -125. The next game I want to talk about is 76ers at Hornets. This game tips at 3 p.m. Eastern, and this is a game where the 76ers just have a pretty crowded injury report. Joel Embiid and Paul George will both be out for Philadelphia. This is a 3rd game in 4 nights for the Sixers. That makes this a spot where I was kind of already looking to back Charlotte, and the Hornets are 2.5 point favorites in this game. Totals 227.5. I have a really strong lean on the Hornets at -2.5, but what I ended up doing with this one is taking Charlotte on an alternate spread at +7.5. And then I also parlayed that with Minnesota money line against Golden State later on, and that's -133. The Timberwolves game is tonight against the Warriors at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. And the reason that I really like Charlotte is just because this team has been really strong lately. I mean, you look at some of the numbers for the last, 10, 15 games, it can be hard to kind of buy what you're seeing because they have a 55-point win over Utah in that span. That's really kind of messing up the numbers. But over the last 5 games, they have a net rating of +6.1. That's a little bit more indicative of where they are right now, and they have won 3 straight games. So they're still playing really well despite, not being able to look at the numbers in the last 10, 15, because that'll put them on par with some of the elite teams in the NBA, because a 55-point win in a short sample size just completely messes the numbers. But I do think this is a team that's playing really well right now. It's the same thing we've kind of been saying for the last couple of weeks. When Ball, Knipple, and Miller are out there, this is a really strong team, and especially when you have like Diabate at center, giving them some really strong two-way play and really strong energy. And then overall, I think the depth of the team is a little bit better than people give them credit for. So I think that this Charlotte team will find a way to win tonight, but I would just feel better about taking some extra points. And the reason that I did it with Minnesota is because the Timberwolves are coming off a 26-point loss to the Warriors at home yesterday. I'd be really surprised if they can't find a way back in the win column. I mean, this has been the reason I've lost a few parlays with Minnesota over the last couple of days. This team is not playing well right now. But at the same time, at some point, this is going to kind of right, the ship. And I do think that this Timberwolves team is better both offensively and defensively than the Warriors are. They're also a little bit younger and more prepared for a back-to-back. I think that that's important. This is a team that's going to be playing at home, so they got to sleep in their beds last night. Golden State's, in hotels. I'd just be really surprised if they can't find a way to win. And it is a game where if Minnesota does not find a way to win this one, I might have to be, coming on here tomorrow and talking about what's wrong with this team because they've been really struggling lately. I keep thinking they're going to figure it out, and I do think they're going to make a trade soon to address their backcourt problems. But, man, it's been ugly over the last couple of games, so hopefully they're able to find a way to get this one home for us. The next play that I have is in the Magic versus Cavaliers, 7 p.m. Eastern tip. The Cavaliers are 5.5-point favorites in this game. Totals 227.5. And the play that I have here is Jalen Tyson over 14.5 points at minus 104. I probably sound like a broken record with Jalen Tyson overs at this point, but Darius Garland is still out for this team. And when Garland is out, there's just so much opportunity for Tyson. I do think that his numbers continue to kind of be low. I know that Sam Merrill is questionable for tonight, so he might be back. That would definitely take a little bit away from Tyson. But between him being questionable and DeAndre Hunter being questionable, there's a chance that there will be somebody out, meaning more minutes for Tyson. And honestly, the last time we saw Tyson play in a game with Merrill and with no Garland, so that might be the situation for tonight, he had 17 points in 31 minutes. That was back on November 8th. It was against the Bulls. I'm really not too worried about his workload. I think that there's a really good chance he plays 30-plus minutes, regardless of who's out there. And I do think that this is a matchup that suits him pretty well. I know that Orlando can be very good defensively, but they are a little bit banged up right now. They have not been playing very well. And we just saw Tyson go for 17 points against the Magic on Saturday. So this is a rematch of that game that was played in Orlando that Cleveland won. And this is a guy that's now scored 16-plus points in 4 of the last 5 games. He's had 16-plus in each of the last 6 games that he's played in Cleveland without Garland. And I do think that while this Orlando team is decent defending the three-point line, they're not perfect. And I do think that Tyson's going to be able to get a little bit going when he drives to the rim. So I just think that this number is a little bit too low again. I think 15-plus is well within the realm of possibility this evening. Wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being well over that in like 18 to 20 again. I think he's a fantastic player, and I think he's a guy that should be starting for them for a very long time. We're getting ready for Big Game 60 with a big deal to match. Save $60 off VSiN Pro annual subscription when you sign up using promo code HARDWOOD, all one word. Become a VSiN Pro annual subscriber. Bet smarter all year long with full access to our daily best bets from VSiN hosts and guests, real-time DraftKings and Circa betting splits, AI-powered prop tools and matchup analysis, 24/7 video and full show replays on the VSiN Watch app, plus all of our betting guides and expert picks for the Super Bowl and upcoming March Madness. Don't miss out on the big game deal. Visit vsin.com/subscribe and use promo code HARDWOOD to save $60 off a VSiN Pro annual subscription today. That's vsin.com/subscribe and then HARDWOOD, HARDWOOD. The next pick that I have for this evening is the Blazers at the Celtics at 8 p.m. Eastern. This is a game where I am taking Portland plus 8.5. I just think that you kind of look at what's been going on with these two teams over the last 10 games, and it tells a story of two that are very, very similar. I actually think that if you look at the numbers from these last 10 games, there isn't a big gap between the two. The Blazers are actually 7-3 in their last 10 with a net rating of plus 4.2. Meanwhile, the Celtics are 5-5 with a net rating of plus 4.7. So Boston not winning as much, but has a slightly stronger net rating. But I do think that this is a game that is really evenly matched, and the Blazers are coming off of 2 full days of rest. This is a third game in 4 nights for the Celtics. And as long as Denny Avdia is out there for Portland, I think this is a game that's going to end up being really close. And I actually wouldn't be surprised if this ends up being a game that the Blazers have a chance to win late. So I took the Blazers plus 8.5. I'll throw in the fact that they're 11-4 against the spread as underdogs of 3.5 to 9.5 with Thiago Splitter as their head coach. And the Celtics are actually under 500 as home favorites of 6.5 to 12 under Joe Mazzulla. So this Portland team under Splitter has been solid when getting a lot of points. Boston doesn't tend to cover big spreads at home under Mazzulla with regularity. So I do think this game will be close, but keep an eye on the Avdia injury report. Like I would probably rather have, 6.5 or 7 and know that Avdia is playing than take it at 8.5. If you're listening to this and you're a little bit scared and don't know exactly what to do, if you're on the fence, but I do think this is worth taking a risk on. But if, you get a better number later on, I wouldn't be against, adding to the position or sprinkling some money line, because I do think there's a good chance that the Blazers keep this game close. And I'll also throw in that I think that, Donovan Clingan being out there against the Boston team that I still am skeptical about when talking about, the guys that they have on the inside. I think there's a chance that the Blazers really dominate the glass in this game. And I think that Clingan, if he can avoid foul trouble, can kind of have his way around the basket with putbacks, pick and roll finishes. He'll knock down a 3 or 2, but I like what he can do in terms of just brute force and size around the rim here. And I do like what Portland has defensively on the wing for Boston. And I think that they have enough offense to kind of stay around in this game. The final game I want to talk about before getting into some big picture stuff, it's the Lakers at the Bulls. This game tips at 8 p.m. Eastern as well. The Bulls are 1.5 point home underdogs. Totals 235.5. Both teams are coming off a day of rest, and this is a game where I'm taking the Bulls plus 1.5 at minus 112. I thought about the money line because I do think Chicago wins this game outright, but it was either Chicago plus 100 or take the 1.5 points at minus 112. I don't think this game will be decided by a point, but if it is at that difference in terms of price, I'd rather just have the 1.5. But the reason I like the Bulls here is just the Lakers are still not impressing me. They've won 3 of their last 4 games. Maybe people will think that they're getting a little bit better because of that, but those games really weren't that impressive. It was a home win over a Toronto team that was not well rested, a win in Denver over a depleted Nuggets team, and then a home win over the Mavericks that were similarly depleted. Just wins over teams that were not at full strength. I need to see them start beating some solid teams, and this Chicago team has been solid. They've won and covered 4 straight games, wins over the Clippers, Timberwolves, and Celtics in that span. Also, over the last 8 games, they're 6-2 with a plus 8.2 net rating. They're just starting to look a little bit more like that team from early in the year. I know that they won, all of their games to start the season, and I don't think that they're, nearly as good as that record suggested. But, now that Josh Giddey is back, this is a team that, for better or worse, for Chicago fans, I know they all want to lose and get a strong pick, and they don't want to continue to be this kind of middle ground team in the Eastern Conference. This is a team, again, that is looking like, the 7th or 8th best team in the East. And I do think that playing at home, getting a 1.5 against a team that can't defend whatsoever, when you are a team that's very, very cerebral and dangerous offensively, I think there's a really good chance they win this game. So Chicago plus 1.5, minus 112 for me. Not a huge play, just to win a single unit, but I do think that the Bulls will find a way to get it done. Recapping what I have for best bets for tonight before kind of getting into some takeaways. Parlay with the Hornets plus 7.5 versus the Sixers and Timberwolves money line versus the Warriors. That's minus 133. I have Jalen Tyson over 14.5 points at minus 104 against the Magic. I have CJ McCollum over 16.5 points at minus 125 versus the Pacers. I have the Blazers plus 8.5 at minus 110 versus the Celtics. And I have the Bulls plus 1.5 at minus 112 versus the Lakers. So those 5 picks for me. It's always possible I'll add something a little bit later on because I do dive back into these games. Once I get a little bit more time and once I kind of see some injury reports, I'll go look a little bit more. So make sure you head over to vsin.com, become a vsin pro. I'll add those picks to the pro picks page. I'll also add them to my columns that will be up shortly after this podcast is released. But I do have 5 for tonight. We'll potentially have some more later. And then I do have some takeaways I want to get into, just kind of some things that we've seen over the last couple of weeks or the last couple of days. But I do think that we have to start with the Clippers, who, won last night again, an absolute blowout over the Nets. And the reason that you want to talk about Los Angeles is not because they just beat Brooklyn. Brooklyn is not a good team. But the reason you talk about the Clippers is they are now 15-3 in their last 18 games. And since December 20th, when that, streak started, they are plus 7.8 point differential. That's 3rd in the NBA. Number 2 offense in the league at 120.9 points per 100 possessions. And number 7 defense in the league at 113.1 points allowed per 100. Los Angeles is now 10th in the Western Conference. They are in the play-in picture. They actually have a 2-game lead over Memphis in the play-in. So not even really, just kind of shaky on the line in terms of being in the top 10. So they are kind of firmly in there right now. And if I had to guess, they will end up being, the 9, not the 10. And I think there's a chance that they catch the 8. So there's a real chance this team ends up making the playoffs. And this is a really, really scary opponent if they actually end up getting there, because what we saw early in the season was terrible. And I think a lot of people jumped off the train. I got on them a lot. I said that I thought they were done because I just thought they dug themselves too big of a hole. And I was not really expecting, a streak quite like this. But this team now has Kawhi Leonard looking like an absolute killer offensively when he is on the floor. He still manages those knee injuries. Those things can take him out at any moment. But when Kawhi's out there with Harden and they have most of the role players out there, they still have two elite offensive playmakers or shot creators, whatever you want to call them, and then a really strong defensive infrastructure. And also, this team, relied on some young pieces early in the year. It didn't really work out for them in the short term, but those guys have all kind of gotten more comfortable playing with some of those superstars over the last couple of weeks. And that's, a big part of the reason this team is winning. So I just think that, Ty Lue has figured out the rotation. Ty Lue is a really good X's and O's coach. I still think that, that what we saw early in the year, was enough to kind of call for his head, which is something that I did. And maybe I looked like an idiot in doing so. But I think that when he has this team rolling, it's as good as any team in the Western Conference. So I think that they were kind of just seeing what a continuation of towards the end of last year when this was the third best team in the NBA. I'm not quite sure they're right there now, but I do think this is a top 5 team in the league when they are playing completely, at full strength, I guess I'll say. So it's just a crazy turnaround for this Clippers team. And I don't think it's ending here. I think they will make the playoffs. And I think that if you're a 1 or 2 seed, the Thunder or currently the Spurs, you're not happy about seeing Los Angeles kind of, starting to figure some things out. So I think that had to be mentioned because the Clippers have just been awesome. And the other thing I wanted to quickly say is that the Eastern Conference just feels like a situation where you could really back some long shots and find a way to, hit on the team that ends up in the NBA Finals. I just think with the way that the Knicks are playing right now, there's no way you could back New York and feel good about it. And I don't think that the Pistons have done, quite enough to prove that they can, win multiple rounds in the playoffs. We haven't even seen them win one round with this team, and we haven't seen them win a home game in like forever. So I don't know. I love Detroit. I love their makeup, but I do think that they're a move away from being a team that, the record suggests they are. I think they need to improve the Tobias Harris spot, and it doesn't sound like they're going to be too aggressive in trying to do that. So I think there are some shots worth taking in the Eastern Conference, and the teams that I'm kind of looking at are the Cavaliers at plus 600 and the 76ers at 12-1. With Cleveland, there's nothing quite like with the Clippers, where it's like an easy turnaround that you could kind of pinpoint and look at the record and look at the numbers, but it does feel like this team is starting to play a lot better, and they have won 7 of their last 10 games. They're starting to kind of beat the teams that they're supposed to beat, and then, beat teams like the Magic, that are, kind of fringe contenders in the Eastern Conference. And as long as Cleveland continues to get healthy, I think we're going to look back on the start of the season like a little bit of a fluke, because I think this Cavaliers team still has a great backcourt, still has some good, two-way wings. And then those bigs inside, well, I don't love them together. They're still, something that other teams have to deal with and do occasionally have trouble doing so. So in kind of a weak Eastern Conference, I still view this as a team that could win. And then Philly, they lost at home the other day to the Knicks. That wasn't a great loss, but the more I see Joel Embiid just out there looking like Joel Embiid, the more I'm going to be kind of, tempted to buy with this team. I mean, the Sixers have one of the best backcourts in the league in Maxey and Edgecombe. I think Paul George has given them some really good minutes at small forward this year, and he's kind of taken to being a role player that just kind of focuses on knocking down some shots, being a secondary, tertiary playmaker, and playing some defense. He's just been a really productive player for them all year, despite coming off injuries and despite having what people might view as a bloated contract. And yeah, it is. It'll look really bad in a few years too, but I think he's taken really nicely to his role. And yeah, as long as Embiid's out there, this is not a team that anybody wants to see in the East. They're as good as anyone on paper. And as long as they have some time to gel together the rest of the season, it's only going to get better. So Philly 12-1, I think, is starting to look like it's worth a look. And yeah, like I said, it's really just because I think there are 6 teams in the Eastern Conference that can really go on and win this conference. And I think that these are 2 of them. And I think you're getting pretty decent prices on them when compared to like the Knicks, who are the favorites, or the Pistons. I don't think that those teams are leaps and bounds ahead of Cleveland or Philadelphia. So those are kind of my two takeaways recently. Big picture, ideas that I've had. Other than that, it's been a lot of injury stuff, a lot of Giannis, John Morant stuff where, they're injuring themselves. They're out multiple weeks, and we're going to wait on the trades for both of them. It seems like they're going to come. But outside of that, yeah, it's not much. Hopefully that you enjoyed the show for today. I hope you jump on these 5 picks with me and you end up winning. We're hoping to get back in the win column and start making a push towards an even stronger season than we're already having. But I think it starts with tonight. I think we'll have a decent night, and I hope you join me for the Tuesday show, because we'll have potentially Kelly Bidlin on to join me and talk through some of these games. And there's always more picks coming down the pipeline. So enjoy tonight's slate, and make sure you join me for the Tuesday episode of Hardwood Handicappers.